So allow me to start our activity today. Dear colleagues, distinguished colleagues, allow me to welcome all of you here and also to extend my professional gratitude to all of you for this ability to participate in this meeting and to discuss a very important topic. Our activity today is taking place on the before the 8th of March. I want to congratulate all of you with this wonderful day. I want to, except for the Spring and Beauty holiday, this is also a holiday related to the rights of women, including environmental, ecological rights. In the context of our activity today, we would like to discuss many pertinent issues, and particularly to discuss women's leadership and to focus on issues relating to waste management, and also to encourage and demonstrate the best practices that exist in the sector of tourism. My name is Asel Arsenbekova. So today I'll be the moderator of our today's session. And I would like to once again remind all of us about the topic of our today's activity, sustainable tourism, the role of women in waste management. So it is called Women in Waste Management in English, and this demonstrates or portrays the role of women in waste management. So I would like to also notify you that this activity is being held within the framework of the UNEP's global program, Global Opportunities for SDGs, Go for SDG, Go for SDG. And this specific activity is being conducted within a framework of activities of a project which is called Sustainable Tourism and Plastic and Food Waste Management. Our agency in Central Asia plays the role of the national focal point of this project. And today in this project, you'll be able to learn more about this project. This is a pilot phase, and in the future, this is going to be replicated in other Central Asian countries and in the Caucasus. That's why today we have invited also the representatives, not only from Kyrgyzstan, who are here with us physically, but also through Zoom. We have our colleagues from the affected countries. This project is also implemented in cooperation with the Ministry of Culture, Information and Tourism of the Kyrgyz Republic. And also, we're very much thankful for the expert support our partners in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Georgia, Eastern Europe, who will also provide support to us and facilitate this dialogue. And today at this activity, we have invited once again, I want to thank you for your participation as and decision makers from state institutions. So we have the presence of the tourist business associations. We're also very delighted to welcome the owners and managers of the hotel sector, the public food safety sector, and other relating sectors. So also, I would like to also point out that we're very happy to welcome the experts, our consultants and civil society representatives, those who are also providing unwavering support through their joint actions relating to the ecologization of the tourist sector and relating to women's leadership and entrepreneurship. So I'll briefly tell you about the agenda for today. We'll be working for 2 hours. Our activity is a hybrid activity since Kyrgyzstan is a pilot country. So we have with us physically offline, and this is being taken place in the Hyatt Hotel. This hotel was selected on purpose. It was not accidental. The Hyatt Hotel signed the VAP UN Women Principles and acceded to the gender equality principles. The Hyatt Hotel is part of the waste management network, wastenet, and we're so much proud that we're able to conduct this activity with a focus on our major topics. So from Central Asian Caucasus, they join us through the online, the Zoom platform. We want to greet you as well and thank you. You have the chance to use simultaneous interpretation if needed. You can select the respective channel, either Russian or English, at the bottom right of your Zoom client. Now, to start our activity, I would like to give the floor to welcome the participants, to our key partners who have joined us online. And now the floor is given to a Deputy Director of the Tourism Department, Ministry of Culture, Information and Tourism of the Kyrgyz Republic, Ms. Kiyal Kenjimatova. Ms. Kiyal Kenjimatova, you have the floor. We cannot hear you. Maybe you're muted. Maybe you're muted. All right, Miss Kayal, we cannot hear you. So if you unmute yourself, we see your icon in front of your name, but then we cannot hear you. All right, I suspect we're having some technical problems. So some of our key partners are experiencing some technical problems. I would like to also say that head of the sub-regional office of the UNEP program in Central Asia, Ms. Aida Kurmanova, she will also join us a little later once she has a chance to get connected or join our meeting. So she will do that a little later. Okay. All right, now we can see you, Ms. Kiel. You have the floor. Ms. Kiel, you have the floor. Here. You're muted. You seem to be muted. All right, the technical support, can you please help us? Because Ms. Kiel seems to be muted and she's talking. Yeah, she seems to be. All right, yes. I mean, she unmuted herself and she started talking, but then we cannot hear anything. So it was not the microphone problem. It was something else. It is something else. Yeah, she's unmuted and she's talking. All right. Well, we're having these technical issues relating to our speakers. So we're trying to resolve them. So I will tell you that our main objective for today within the framework of this meeting is to discuss issues relating to the strengthening of role of women in the tourist sector. Most importantly, today we want to hear more from you, some ideas or recommendations on how exactly on the ground in the regions in the tourist sector, through women's entrepreneurship and leadership, how exactly we can resolve the problem relating to the waste accumulation. So we're talking not just about the Kyrgyz Republic, but we're talking about Central Asian countries and the Caucasus that have also joined us and they're part of the dialogue. So I would like to clarify, do we have a chance to let our speaker make her welcoming remarks? Is everything fine now? So let us not wait while we're resolving these technical issues. Well, we understand that, well, anything happens, but anyway. So now let us go back to our agenda and let me notify you that the tourism industry plays an important role in resolving the economic opportunities for women. And in turn, this has a positive impact on other sectors of our economy. At the same time, in other relating areas, we have a lot of women who are employed, starting from the ordinary level and then up to the managers and owners in this sector. Women play an important role in making the tourism sector more ecological. And regrettably, we see some potential which has not yet been unleashed. And this can make the tourism sector more ecological and more sustainable. Like I said, except for the major objective for today, we have two other points that we would like to discuss and update. Today, we want to study the role of women in increasing productivity and also in bringing sustainable solutions in the tourism sector and waste management. And also want to hear from you about some valuable experience of the existing practices and successful stories and how exactly you were able to resolve certain issues on the ground relating to the waste accumulation. Also, today we want to create some prerequisites or preconditions for establishing partner relations, both inside the country, domestically, and also with our partners in Central Asia and the Caucasus. So I would like to once again stress that all of your opinions will be highly valuable for us. And today within our activity, we will hear some key messages from our speakers, from our experts, from our women leaders. And please be so kind, you can use the pieces of the sheets of paper that you have, and you can use the chat box. So please take notes. And if you can make these comments when we have a Q&A session, you'll have a chance to have a discussion and to make your suggestions and proposals in order to discuss and plan our joint actions. So can you please tell me, is it possible to have Ms. Kial with us or not? Not working? Okay. All right, it's her microphone. It was her microphone. We will try to resolve the technical issue that has to do with the microphone. She'll be on with us. Well, regrettably, the welcoming remarks will happen a little later, but this is okay. And now let me draw your attention to our agenda. This is the agenda that you received and we invited you. And also for us to start our discussion, I would like to suggest that, so the key message relating to gender aspects, in order for us to identify those key areas of discussion for the future. So I want to introduce our speaker and expert from the Women Engaged for the Common Future project, right? Is that the name? Ms. Anna Kirilenko. She is our partner. She is our expert. And Anna, she will share the survey findings. Well, thank you. Thank you, Asal. Distinguished dear friends, dear female friends, very happy to be here. And yes, indeed, I'm very happy to discuss such an important topic as women's involvement in the area of tourism development, in particular, sustainable development and issues of waste management. As was mentioned by Asel, the 8th of March is not just only about the spring holiday and flowers and beauty, but this is also a holiday that's the day when we commemorate the fight, women's struggle and fight for their rights. And today it's important for us to discuss these topics. Can we have my presentation up on the screen? I want to also show some slides. I'll be having some images and pictures just to make it more vivid, more dynamic, so that we're more immersed into the topic. The research, the survey that I would like to present today, the findings, it was carried out several years ago, and the focus of this research study was aimed at specifically preparing or making some kind of an overview at the international level within three chemical conventions. So I also want to say that a serious role, a serious attention was paid to the issue of waste. I understand that Maybe this does not have anything to do with the tourism, but still in my presentation, I'll try to make that connection, that bridge. Now, this is exactly what Asel spoke about earlier. Can we have the first slide? So I want to tell you more about this organization because I want to invite you to join and accede to this organization. Well, Women Engaged for the Common Future. This is an international network comprised of over 100 women's ecological organizations from over 40 countries, and they implement projects in all kinds of areas, including areas on waste management, including chemical safety, chemical security. So if somebody's interested, I will leave the website here. So the link is here. You can become members of this network because well, this solidarity and this interaction, it's very essential, both domestically and here internationally. The next slide. All right. All right. Now, the methodology was quite simple. We had a number of meetings, in-depth interviews. We had a field visit to the regions, and we discussed the problems and challenges, and some of the cases and some positive practices were discussed. So I will not dwell too much on the national strategic documents. I would like to simply congratulate all of us with the fact that we have adopted the national strategy on gender equality by 2030. This is a highly important document. It is very crucial because in this document, we have things like training for women farmers on climate optimized agriculture. And not just that, it's also on collecting and analyzing statistical data on gender issues and all. This is supporting women entrepreneurs and so on. So in this regard, this document and this action plan is an important, crucial document for this sector.
So this is regarding the issue of approaches. See, I just couldn't help but talk about it because it's very important. These are the stats that I think would be relevant for you and some of the figures that could show you what the situation in the country is with regards to waste management and waste disposal. Here, with a breakdown by province, and even though, despite the fact that throughout the country, we have almost 60% of waste collection is performed based on standard dump trucks, trash collection trucks, most of which are not even legitimate in the sense that that they are not compliant with the legislation. In other words, the waste is generally simply burned, and then most of the waste is simply dug into the ground. However, if you look at the breakdown by province, you can see that the situation is relatively complex, especially in the Balkan province, which is in South Kyrgyzstan, where you can see that dump sites, landfills, if you will, they collect more than 40% of all the waste. Now, almost 30% is burned, and 16% of waste is dug into the ground in the Balkan province. And these are very alarming, concerning numbers. So when we talk about burning, it means that plastic is being burned as well. And plastic generates toxic waste, volatile organic compounds into the air, which results in major oncological respiratory diseases. And we all know that that's an extra burden on the public healthcare system. And within the households and families, we know that the primary burden of care for one sick people eventually falls on the shoulders of women. So this infographics is also something that I want to draw your attention to. This is how this project was prepared by our colleagues. These are the importation of plastic waste into Kyrgyzstan. And pretty much all the way until year 2017, that burden was decreasing. However, after 2017, you can see a major spike in these numbers. And again, it was somewhat difficult for me to change this graph. However, I put a breakdown in Russian below it, which shows that all the way till 2021, the amount of waste imported into Kyrgyzstan was not even decreasing, but was relatively consistent, which means that our international colleagues demonstrated very clearly that after 2017, China closed its borders to plastic waste for European nations, meaning that plastic waste are now being imported into Kyrgyzstan instead of China, which represents a major risk. So what do we do about it? See, in addition to the fact that a part of the plastic waste that we generate within our domestic operations is now augmented by imported plastic waste from other countries. So here it is imperative that we keep in mind this framework every time we discuss the whole concept of waste management. Now, going back to our main topic, that's an overview of the scoping study, which triggers several issues of concern. I'm not going to go in a great detail over every single one of them. However, I would definitely like to touch on some of the more important ones: mercury, organic agricultural, stable organic pollutants, resultant organic pollutants. Some of you are probably aware of that. These are hazardous chemical compounds that once they arrive into a human body or into ecosystems, they do not, there is no half-life about it. They do not disintegrate. They do not degrade. They persist from a generation to a generation. So here are several points: chrysotillus asbestos, and certain issues associated with the fact that in the National Plan for General Planning and in the waste management strategy, these issues unfortunately have not yet been reflected. Hopefully, as part of this initiative, the solutions to these issues will eventually be found. Now, speaking of mercury, I would like to touch on the fact that some of you may have heard about the fact that now, these days, especially in South Kyrgyzstan, gold mining, especially informal gold mining, is very widespread, and it involves compounds or concentrates that involve mercury. And in those kitchens where women are present, where children are present, this mercury is being accumulated in human bodies, in the bodies of women and children, which then eventually result in major health issues. Now, your question might be, how is that related to tourism? Well, what are we developing here? If you want to develop sustainable tourism, it cannot really coexist with these so-called dirty technologies. And that means that while combining our efforts, we have to make every effort to minimize, to mitigate all these manifestations of pollutions so that we could safeguard our households, our communities. Now, going back to stats, if you can take a look at the difference that currently exists between gender-wise between men and women. So please take a look that when it comes to primary education, vocational education, well, we can see relatively same statistics in certain ways for primary, when it comes to primary education and vocational education, men are overrepresented there. And the other way around, women are actually overrepresented in tertiary, higher education. However, what takes place after that? How the life cycle changes after that? After they graduate. When it comes to the involvement of men and women in workforce, the difference, the discrepancy is very evident. Men are much more likely to find gainful employment after graduating from colleges compared to women. Well, so what happens is, despite the fact that generally women are supposed to be more educated based on numbers, they are less represented in the eventual workforce. Almost 40% of all women find themselves in the concept called female-led households. So this gap, this divide in gainful employment mostly applies to young women within the age group from 22 to 45 years old, meaning that that's the perfect, most labor-capable age when a woman can contribute to the society. That's where women are excluded or otherwise discriminated. And the problem is that this number is growing. The number of households led by women is growing. And individuals who are involved in informal sector, in other words, women who do not have employment contracts, is also growing. Also, the compensation remuneration gap is also very wide, especially in Central Asia. It's almost 25%, meaning that women generally tend to be paid 25% less for the same job they're doing as men. So we have different roles, and we accordingly respond in a different manner to those risks, including the risks associated with waste. And we are finding different ways to how we can combat this. So speaking of these risks and threats, please take a look at the following. Again, when we speak of development of tourism, we keep saying that our country is a country of organic agriculture, that we generate great organic agricultural produce. That's not necessarily true. It's not always true. I just wanted to draw attention to a study performed by Mr. Tochuev in South Kyrgyzstan, and he studied the impact of organic compounds on male infertility and the female reproductive function. So he analyzed placentas and breast milk and try to show how the migration of organic compounds take place from a generation to a generation. So when a woman gives birth, she remits the accumulated organic compounds to the fetus, to the child, which is a way how nature helps woman rid itself from these organic compounds. Yet these organic compounds are then go to the child, and the child keeps accumulating that and then giving birth to another child. So every time we plan or design our work in the area of sustainable tourism, we really have to take a look at places that are safest for women, that are not associated with these organic compounds, including areas where the cotton growing is predominant. So speaking of pesticides, let me just give you a couple of examples of how it is important to think about all this every time we procure all these products for ourselves and for the tourism sector. We need to know who our vendors are, what they sell, how they grow their produce. And this study was assisted by Elvira Jakipova and my other colleagues. In other words, those organizations that were able to demonstrate how the objectives are divided between the genders in terms of the pesticide impact. So at the same time, women interact with pesticides, although on a lesser basis, but then in other industries and areas, they also are exposed just as much, if not even more, to those risks. See, disposal of pesticide containers. That's exactly that's a mostly women's chore. So meaning that women are more exposed to that. Also, when we conducted the study, it also demonstrated that women are way more involved in the burning of plastic waste, exposing themselves even more to all these fumes and soot and cinder and volatile organic compounds that's generated by this by the burning of plastic waste. I realized that a lot of so whenever we talk about it, please pay attention to this phenomenon. Also, the study showed that every third person who uses pesticides then generally reported throughout his or her life about health problems associated with that. Just think about these horrible numbers. Every third person was eventually poisoned, contaminated by the burning of plastic waste. And the poisoning started with boys within the age group of 11, 12, or 13. The children who are involved in domestic activities all the way from their early teenage years, from their formative years, when their bodies are growing, meaning that today we have to see a whole new system. Whenever we develop our businesses, we need to understand all these changes, that responsible businesses have to understand what they buy, what the products that they buy contain. And if we arrange a business of ours, we have to prevent such risks from polluting the environment and from contaminating people. We need to make sure that our businesses are sustainable and resilient, that they are optimized for nature, that they're sensitive to the ecosystems and human health. See, women over the age of 18 are so much more exposed to chemicals simply because they are the ones washing all the clothes using all those chemicals. Now, if you're interested in further details and findings of the study, we will be happy to share this presentation among all of you. You can see that infographics here are very interesting. I will not dwell on the details here. However, I will go over the findings of another study. Now, please take a look at the horrible picture here below where children are shown at the bottom left corner. See, I'm pretty sure that a lot of you have heard about the problem of asbestos. Indeed, that's a major problem because asbestos used on roofing or fences, it once it becomes a fracturing, what it starts emitting small fibers, and these microfibers, once they enter a human respiratory system, generate a major respiratory disease, or even diseases that can start 20 years from now, 30 years from now. So this deferral of human health issues will become a burden on the shoulders of future generations, and that's exactly the problem that nobody talks about. However, this asbestos and this typical problem of asbestos is a part of waste management, of all the waste accumulated on those landfills. And this corrugated asbestos roofing is a very prevalent, very popular choice of roofing in rural areas, and that's exactly what's being disposed of on those landfills. So whenever you arrange your business, try to avoid using asbestos. Try to use more organic, safer, more sustainable, healthier solutions. Perhaps some of them will be more expensive. However, they will help you minimize the exposure of people to such volatile compounds, especially women who are then involved in the disposal. Now, the gender aspects of risk distribution is a whole different topic. These are the pictures from the Bishkek landfill, and Bermet Borobava is much more aware about this, as well as her colleagues that have been dealing with the problem of the municipal landfill disposal side. The problem is that these days, on this landfill, definitely there is gender disaggregation, and there are so many more women there compared to men, because women tend to be more economically vulnerable. So every effort, every contribution you make to involve women in businesses, to empower women economically, every time we do that, we have to warn them against ending up in these scenarios. Here, as you can see, that findings of interviews show that the earnings of women are that work on that municipal landfill are between 200 to 500 soms per day, that they are not wearing any personal protective equipment, and a lot of that is something that Bermat can talk about. However, I just wanted to draw your attention to this end result, to this ultimate outcome. Where does this waste end up if there are no facilities for the sorting of that waste, if there are no opportunities to prevent this waste from being generated by our businesses, not in the least. Now, going back to resilient organic compounds and contaminants, which is something persistent organic pollutants and compounds and contaminants, they impact human health, reproductive systems, respiratory systems, immune systems. And we have to understand that any landfill, especially those that are eternally burning, they are the sources of the emission of these persistent organic pollutants. And you have to understand that the sorting of waste is definitely a challenge for us today. We have to aim at sorting, at minimizing dangerous hazardous waste, and at using recycling, such as organic food waste, etc. So, just like I said, as per expert findings, at least 60%, around 60% of all women are involved in waste sorting at the municipal disposal and sites and landfills in Osh, Bishkek, and Jalalabad, which I attended personally, which I could see with my own eyes, the gender distribution, and where I could interview all these women. So as a result, we were able to identify certain best practices, and I would like to note Tinatin Kildiva, who represent the Kyrgyz Turkish University Manas, the Department of Plant Protection. She drafted and tested and is now developing the methodology of soil remediation and rehabilitation or other compounds in soil that can degrade these persistent organic pollutants. And of course, there are other practices, good practices that are being developed by women, promoted by women, and it's imperative that we support such women. Here is Jamila Mankulova. Here we can see Jildis from Agriprom, Indira, as well as a lot of other champions and pioneers of women-led organic waste management cause. Now, there would be so many more women who I could list, who I could mention, who work to minimize the risk and exposure for both the ecosystems, nature, and humans, and who are willing to introduce and pilot new practices and techniques, who we hope would be picked up on and piggybacked on by other stakeholders, corporations, businesses, so that they could become leaders of change. Now, I'm not going to go over every single detail that of the findings that we have identified here. All I wanted to say that statistics are important because these days the stats do not reflect the reality.
Not even at this intersection of gender and waste, gender and tourism, gender and business. So we may need this data because without this data, it's impossible, difficult to make decisions. At the same time, we also need a system of benefits. So we also need a system of financial support by the state for women's businesses and for women entrepreneurs, and particularly for those who go toward circular economy, green economy. Of course, as you could see on the first slide, I would like to say that we do need to have systems that would have an impact on preventing the incineration of waste, burning of waste. This is one of the most dangerous, hazardous ways of disposal. And also we may need, besides, we may also need to somehow rehabilitate those women who work at landfills. We should not forget about them. And also men, of course, men as well. But we also need to do our best so that these people who found themselves in difficult life circumstances, they're there at the moment, they should have some options. They should have some alternatives to change their lives, their destinies. And of course, we also need some target indicators, some targets within our strategic programs and projects implemented at the national and national levels. So I believe that we also need some network-based initiatives, because only if we join hands, if we stand united, if we unite this diversity of experience that we have, we'll be able to find the best options and the ways for businesses to grow on the one hand, but also to make businesses more greener and more socially responsible. Thank you. Thank you, dear friends. This was my last slide. I'll be happy to answer any questions if this is required. Well, thank you so much for a very interesting topic that you have discussed here. And in particular, I want to thank you for discussing the waste accumulation, and also not only with the focus on waste, on hazardous waste. This topic had to be discussed. But most importantly, the most important message that we heard today, it had to do with the impact and dangers and hazards of accumulating. So now our country happened to be in a very difficult situation. And it has to be recognized that women are basically in this chain of waste management. So first of all, women, there is some negative impact. On the other hand, women are involved as a labor force, if you will. Regrettably, these are not the best working conditions that they work in. And also in Kyrgyzstan, we have some successful stories of success that have to do with the fact that women support and they help in resolving these issues. And today in our organization, we identified over 70 women in Kyrgyzstan, those who work each in at their level, at the local level. So we have women who manage and own enterprises and waste management, and also women who are heads of and they manage organizations in various sectors and areas, and they introduced in their organizations acceptable solutions for waste management. So here we also have women who provide expert support in all areas relating to this issue, including women's leadership and also including the opportunities that can be provided, and also in the area of improving the situation relating to all kinds of waste. So we'll be happy to send this presentation to everyone, and also information about the Women Engaged organization, so that the participants of our today's event could take these contacts and use them for their gains. And also we would like to switch to our next presentation on experience in countries of women's leadership, basic management in the tourist sector. We have invited our colleagues, our experts, and the leaders, if you will, those that work on this agenda in their respective countries on women leadership, and also in the area of environmental climate agenda with the focus on waste. So allow me to give the floor to our colleague, Ms. Malika Sharipov from Uzbekistan, who is the founder and the director of a company, CARE CSR. So CARE, this is an abbreviation, stands for Central Asian Responsible Environment, Corporate Social Responsibility. So Malika will be sharing the experience of Uzbekistan and also those problems that women face at their workplaces, and also she'll provide recommendations on how Uzbekistan is coping with these problems and how exactly we can have some joint action and cooperate on improving the life of women and the situation relating to waste. Malika, she's with us online. Malika, can you hear us? Yes. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? We can hear you perfectly loud and clear. Yes, you have the floor. All right. So first off, I would like to extend my gratitude to the organizers of this important meeting. This is a very important topic. So thank you for inviting me here, Estelle, and I'll be very happy to share some information. So today, I would like to talk a little bit more about the role of women in waste management. So what exactly is done in Uzbekistan and what can be done in Central Asia? So the first slide, can we see the first slide and the second as well, right away? All right. So of course, we, the women who were gathered at this meeting, we understand that waste management is important for sustainable development. And this helps resolve plays an important role. So what role does it play, waste management? So first off, this helps protect the environment, because Anna just told us, if we do not properly dispose of waste, this may lead to soil contamination and air pollution. And this has an impact and has some serious impact on women's health. Also, this helps preserve resources, because if we deal with the waste and something that can be recycled or can be reprocessed, and also this decreases the need of primary materials that may help preserve the environment and also the ecosystems. Also, this helps improve public health. So we're not going to talk about that because we heard about it earlier. This helps provide economic opportunities by creating jobs in the recycling, and also this helps sell the recycled materials or energy that was generated while doing so. This helps sustain sustainable production, which helps minimize the impact of goods and services on the environment. So throughout their entire life cycle. If we look at the next slide, all right. So what role is played by women in waste management? So women, not only in Uzbekistan, but in Central Asia, they play a particular role, particularly in the informal sector of waste management. In accordance with the ILO's report, women, they are a substantial part of the workforce in the informal sector, both in Uzbekistan and also in other Central Asian countries. So women participate in collection and sorting out and some recycling of waste. Also, women, what role could they possibly play? So if we look at the planning and waste management policy, yes, there are some women activists, but let's say they do not have much of a voice. So women in Central Asia, they should be advocating the policy that protects their interests and also where priority is given to public health and environmental protection. Also, women may participate in educational and informational activities on waste handling. But once again, this has to do with education, and this is a separate topic. And also women in Central Asia, they may also be involved in entrepreneurial activities in this area. But here, they may face some obstacles because this area is dominated by men. The next slide. So what problems are faced by women in waste management in Central Asia, not alone Uzbekistan? So they face a whole number of problems because we also have this culture of the cultural values or stigmas. And they face discrimination. And also they face discrimination and biases, and they have limited access to education, even if the state is providing all kinds of programs and grants for women, but still due to some family circumstances because of culture and traditions, very often women are not allowed to be part of the educational sector. So poor working conditions. We heard about it previously. They don't even have the personal protective equipment. They simply work with bare hands. And this is the toxic environment. And this may have an impact on their health, or they may get some traumas, when there are some sharp objects in that waste. Women in Central Asia, they have limited access to the funding of resources because once again, due to some cultural peculiarities, women are not the owners of property. And this limits their possibilities to become investors or entrepreneurs or to buy new technologies that may help them generate extra profit. All right, let us take a look at how women and the gender diversity may help in waste management. What advantages we can observe? Of course, if you have gender diversity, that means that you have a diversity of opinions. This is different experience and different waste management practices, and this may lead to innovations. And this is improving the solution of problems because the companies may be having different perspectives and opinions, and this will be much more effective. This will help produce more effective solutions. This may help boost efficiency and productivity. So once again, this may reflect those communities that they serve. And also, different research shows that women, they have more trust from certain parts of society. So they can interact with various people sometimes more effectively, and they establish a rapport with other people easily. And this helps expand the community engagement as well. And also, we talk about increasing profits. So the research has been carried out, and that this research study demonstrates that the companies owned by women, managed by women, are more successful. All right, this is Uzbekistan's experience. Waste management is a very pertinent issue in Uzbekistan. Annually, we have a lot of waste accumulated, and you can see it. So this is the World Bank data that in Uzbekistan, with 15 million tons of solid waste is generated, only 5% of that waste is processed. And then the rest goes to a landfill. So once again, this has an impact on the environment. And so the Uzbek government is implementing a whole number of policies and programs aimed at improving the waste management practices. This is also made part of the national strategy on waste management. So in 2019, it was done. And then this is the Clean City campaign, which constitutes measures like increasing the number of waste collection points, improving the waste collection infrastructure, and also building awareness, public awareness on waste management. Also, we have something on solid waste. This is funded by the World Bank. It is aimed at improving the waste management in some certain municipalities throughout the country. This also includes the sorting out of garbage or trash, because as such, it doesn't exist yet. And of course, the state or the government of Uzbekistan encourages public-private partnerships in the area of waste management, including the construction and the utilization of waste processing infrastructure. Next slide. Now we have listed here a number of problems that exist relating to the gender topic and in this area. So to resolve these problems in Uzbekistan, like I said, certain efforts were made. So the International Labor Organization, it was working with the government and other stakeholders, and they developed a program that was aimed at women training, particularly in the informal sector. And this was aimed at improving their labor conditions. And also this helps promote a more sustainable methods of waste management. This program is also aimed at supporting entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, and providing assistance while developing new business models and other approaches that may bring some more profit, generate more profit, and this may allow them or provide them with some additional jobs and to hire other women. As we can see, the policy in waste management taking into account gender aspects and the professional education is more or less established in Uzbekistan. There are certain stipends and grants which are provided by the government for women and girls. But here I would like to mention that we need to have more programs of internship programs and mentorship programs. And this is where we can cooperate with other Central Asian states. We can learn their experience and share experience, and this would allow women give some practical experience, and this would help them expand their networking. So we're also talking about some educational campaigns. We need more campaigns like that. We need to stress the important role of women, specifically in waste management. So by supporting women in waste management, we can help create more inclusive and sustainable areas. We can create more sustainable waste management systems that will be beneficial not only for the environment, but also for the economy and for society. Promoting gender equality and expanding and working on women empowerment so that they can build a career in this area. And also they can become financially independent. I understand that we're pressed for time. I will stop here. So if you have any questions, we'll be sharing our experience. All right, thank you so much for your presentation. So the problem that we're discussing today at this roundtable meeting, it is also relevant for Uzbekistan as well. And based on my data, so now Uzbekistan, basically in the region in Central Asia, is in the lead in terms of the percentage rate, in terms of waste that should be processed. And that, of course, the government should be commended, and also all those who are involved in resolving this problem. But regrettably, we have to agree with you that as of now, as of yet, women still experience difficulties, and there is some discrimination against them. However, the Uzbek experience is very useful. Please stay in touch. A little later, we'll have a dialogue. So we'll be able to discuss some joint actions that can be done in our countries. So I want to now share and give the floor to our next speaker from Georgia, Ms. Nana Takvarelia. She represents the CENN organization. This organization is located in Georgia, but still they have a lot of experience of joint initiatives and participation, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. So the organization has a lot of experience on how to resolve problems relating to waste management. So what solutions can be taken at the local level and in the regional context. So Nana is with us online. So I would like to clarify, Nana, are you with us?
Hello, yes, I'm here. I'll be speaking in English.
All right, sure. So we do have interpretation, no worries. So our users are online and they can also switch if needed to the Russian channel. Thank you, Nana, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Also, thank you very much for taking interest in our experience. As I understand, you'll be sharing a presentation and I will be speaking, right? So my name is Nana Takvareli. I represent environmental organization CEN, which stands for Caucasus Environmental NGO Network. We have been around for over 20 years working on key environmental issues such as waste management, forestry, climate, rural development, and climate smart agriculture. But we also work beyond these topics on democracy and civil society, etc. Our expertise in waste management has been a long-standing expertise, and today I'd like to share some of our experiences regarding waste management, particularly plastic waste management, food waste management, and the role of women entrepreneurs and how we see this. Next slide, please. And just to give you a short overview, I'd like to also talk about current situation and challenges in waste management in Georgia. As I mentioned, our own experience, and give some of the examples of entrepreneurship in waste sector and in green economy that we have worked with, and how we also see behavior-centered approach and how we see the role of women in this regard. Next slide, please. So as you know, and we talked a lot about this in this conference, plastic pollution has become a global challenge, and the production of waste has increased exponentially over the years. And now we are concerned also with microplastics found in water, food, in human blood, and in mother's milk as well. Next slide, please. And Georgia is no exception to this rule. We recently conducted a study on plastic waste generation, looking at import, exports, and national level production. And we found out that over the last 10 years, the import and production of plastic in Georgia increased by 73%. And alone in 2020, the amount of plastic produced and imported in Georgia came to over 180,000 tons. And from this, 93% of this plastic already turned into waste. Next slide, please. And of course, this is directly related to general infrastructure of Georgia, which is characterized as a very fragmented infrastructure in terms of waste management. We have hundreds and hundreds of illegal dump sites that are polluted by plastics, and also even official landfills do not meet the sanitary requirements in order to prevent from harmful chemicals leaking into the environment, in our water, in our air. So therefore, this represents incredibly damaging factor for our economic development, for our public health, and also in tourism sector, when Georgia is, for example, positioning itself as an agricultural tourism sector, it is extremely damaging to also not have a proper waste management infrastructures in place, and of course it impacts our local economies. Therefore, we are working hard to ensure that these infrastructures, especially in various landscapes, are ensured so that it does not leak into the environment and doesn't damage our economy. One of the main issues that we keep coming across is improper waste collection or infrequent waste collection. And natural landscapes have a lot to do with this problem due to high mountainous regions not having access to the resources and technologies necessary to create waste management systems. And we looked at some of the plastic waste generations recently, and we found that most of it comes from plastic bags, PET bottles, and other plastic waste, and their division accordingly is 44%, 22%, and then 27% on other types of plastics. Next slide, please. And our experience, particularly in waste management, we had a long, about 8-year-long waste management technologies in region, a project that focused on municipal and national level of creating waste management plans and strategies. Also, we were involved in National Plastic Waste Prevention Program. This is a policy level strategy that targets the entire value chain of plastic, and we are echoing EU's plastic waste management strategy in circular economy to try and introduce similar approaches also locally, and looking at imports, re-exports, and local productions. We also worked on sustainable food systems, targeting with reduction of food waste on a national level, and we have a lot of activities directed at campaigning, public campaigning, and working with the private sector to create opportunities, but also to create corporate behavior change, as we believe that private sector plays a huge role in reducing pollution. Next slide, please. So one of our key directions in waste management, we actually managed to create a waste management association that unites all recycling companies, collection and recycling companies. And in this regard, our gender approach was to look at gender roles within the sector and enable and create opportunities for women to move up the value chain and be in short places, positions in decision-making positions. As we look at the sector, even though there is a significant involvement from the women, they tend to be on a lower level of value chain, and we wanted to really understand this gender dynamics in the sector from an entrepreneurial perspective, and make sure that women have also equal access to decision-making positions and higher level positions. We also work with municipalities, different municipalities, especially in protected land regions where tourism is very important, to create sustainable waste management strategies and action plans to allow these regions to create proper infrastructures. And in parallel to everything, we have been holding active public campaigns and launching education programs in order to raise awareness on waste management issues and the role of each citizen in contributing to reducing waste. And one of the other directions that we work towards is to close down illegal dump sites and ensure that the Georgian government meets its agreement of EU association to create 8 sanitary landfills across Georgia and close down all non-sanitary landfills and illegal dump sites. This is one of the biggest problems right now, environmentally and in terms of public health, as these illegal dump sites are countless and they keep reappearing, and management of those is becoming more and more difficult. Next slide, please. When we are talking about National Plastic Waste Prevention Program, that SEN was one of the main contributing authors of this strategy, we were actually looking at different components of plastic value chain, and we analyze the situation globally and nationally to be able to create more sustainable and circular economic approach to plastic sector. And this was looking at improving product design, reducing single-use plastics, improving separate collections across the country, and increasing recycling quality and capacity. We are also looking at investments driving to boost markets for secondary materials. We are looking at curbing marine pollution and how microplastic can be also avoided. We are looking at cleaning up our environment from plastic pollution and promoting alternative feedstocks. We are also trying to drive investments to promote research in this regard, and echo kind of global actions that, especially within the European Union, we have been trying to create a parallel strategy on a national level that mirrors the strategy of the European Union, in order to be able to avoid the country becoming key locations for importing waste. And we were talking about earlier about China's refusal of importing waste from the Western countries, and we are very much aware of the risks this is carrying also for countries like Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, etc. And we really want to monitor the quality of waste that is imported in the country, and really want to monitor that this quality is also reliable in terms of to be used within the local economy, so that we can yield some economic benefits from this activity. Next slide, please. And in terms of our food systems and food waste, we have an incredibly huge problem when it comes to generating food waste. Over 43% of waste in our landfills is represented by food waste and organic waste. And this is the largest share of waste streams that exist in Georgia. And of course, this creates very serious risks for the environment and our health. But we also look at the legal infrastructure and legal framework that doesn't really exist in Georgia yet. And we are losing a lot of organic waste or food on both on food loss level and on consumer level. And in order to try and redistribute the food that is still usable, we are looking at what the barriers that exist. And one of the main barriers that exist right now is that many companies and supermarkets and private sector are being taxed for donating surplus food. And we understood that this created huge amounts of food waste, as it was easier for companies to basically discard waste in the landfills than to reallocate it for human or animal use. For this reason, we conducted an intensive advocacy project to target tax legislations to be changed and exempt companies and organizations from taxes when donating food to charities and for human consumption or for animal consumption. And when we talk about gender roles within this sector, our gender approach is to acknowledge their roles in waste management, their relationship with waste, and particularly on a household level, but also making sure that we support opportunities, as I mentioned, to women in the sector to assume more decision-making roles and higher positions. We also consider women in terms of education. On a household level, women are decision makers of how food is managed and how waste is discarded. But they're also responsible for teaching new generations of behavior changes. And they're also responsible in school level education, as majority of teachers are actually women across Georgia. So we look at these gender dynamics within the system, and we try to optimize this opportunity in order to create systemic changes. As you know, household resources and waste disposal, women do not always have equal input into the allocation of family finances, for example. Although women might be willing to spend some scarce household resources on waste disposal, their spouses may not agree. And we want to be able to be inclusive in our approaches when talking about policy level change and when talking about communicating important information to key actors. And the key actors we see women, especially in food value chain. And in Georgia also, we see that when on a municipal level decision-making processes are taken, they do not have access to institutional resources, and they are not represented on an institutional level, even though their role in waste management, whether on a household level, whether it's municipal waste or food waste in particular, their role is pretty critical, and we don't see their interests and their needs being reflected on an institutional level. So for this reason, we think that we have to look at the whole process on a larger scale to ensure women's access to decision-making processes and actually incorporate their experience in what we decide to do on a national level. Next slide, please. If you could go to the next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we believe that private sector has a huge role to play in waste management and in preventing pollution. So we frequently launch nationwide campaigns to raise awareness, but also to engage the private sector on different levels. And right now we're launching a campaign that targets organizations and companies to encourage them to switch to green procurement and adopt sustainability practices within their companies. Next slide, please. And through this, we're looking at global trends of what companies are doing and what their sustainability strategies look like. And we want to use that momentum from on a global level to introduce the similar concepts nationally in Georgia and use these role models by partnering with them to drive some corporate consciousness towards sustainability practices. Next slide, please. We piloted a project with one company and we looked at their strategy, environmental friendly practices. And as a pilot project, we tested how much we could do in order to reduce consumption and generation of plastic waste. And we reached some very important levels of waste generation reduction, and we managed to replicate this model across different entrepreneurs and different companies. Next slide, please. And now we are involving businesses and organizations nationwide to help them target their waste generation and actually introduce sustainable practices by changing internal policies and switching to green procurement practices. And we are helping them to gather correct data to develop strategies that is targeted to their own companies and their own context, and to also link them to recyclers to close gaps between the value chain, between waste generators and waste collectors, because the infrastructure in Georgia is so fragmented. There is no recycling system collection that exists across Georgia. So we are trying to close this gap across the value chain and also boost the markets for recycling sector. Next slide, please. Please skip the next slide. We already talked about some of these issues. I won't focus on specifics of our campaign, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer those questions. We are also, when we're looking at entrepreneurship and women's roles in entrepreneurship, we are trying to understand where women are represented in these value chains within the waste sector, and not just in plastic and food, but other waste as well. And we're trying to maximize their opportunities, and we're trying to target women in our communication as primary actors of change makers. And one of the examples is that we worked on a green entrepreneurship project, and we tried to increase capacity of women entrepreneurs in sustainability sector. And one of the examples is this company called Limo in textile industry, who is now able to collect factory textile waste to make clothing lines for women and children, and it's a business model that is based on circular economy. And we saw that a lot of women actually work in textile industry, and we saw it as a missed opportunity that they were not involved in circular economy economic approach within the country. So we actually helped several women in textile sector to receive resources cheap from the factories, and they were also able to purchase processing machines to generate material used for their clothing lines. Next slide, please. Yes, we also looked at entrepreneurship opportunities within food waste and food sector, and we discovered that new technologies play an important role in driving changes and creating innovations. And one of the examples is Pig Food, which is a new technology for that connects surplus food left from restaurants and cafes and shops to consumers. And this is a mobile application that connects, that creates a new platform for such purchases. And we saw that technologies are an important drivers for waste management solutions, and we're trying to look at actually investing in this sector and prioritizing information technologies going forward. Next slide, please. If you could, yes. Another example that came out of Georgia, we are looking at collectors and recyclers across Georgia, and one startup that we work with right now is collecting plastic bottle lids and processing the plastic to produce USB cables. And we have been able to mobilize large amounts of waste through connecting this business with different businesses, different establishments, in order to close the gap of providing raw materials to these companies. A couple of things I would also like to mention about gender roles and role of women, especially in Georgia. We discovered that in 2020, women represent about 36% of agricultural forest and agricultural production activities. And many women also work in family businesses, but are not remunerated.
Nana, with your permission, can we sort of go over a couple more slides, and so that we could give more time for other speakers, with your kind permission?
Yes, we can. This is the last slide, I believe.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Nana, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Nana. Thank you so much. Thank you for making it in time. Now, there were important messages and ideas that you were trying to communicate within the sector of waste management in Georgia, including some of the novelty practices and approaches, which we believe would be replicable and definitely something to learn from in the countries of Central Asia. Now, I'm positive that there will be more opportunity for us to discuss some of the tangible results that your organization was able to secure as part of the projects that it piloted in Georgia. I would so again, thank you very much for your presentation, and as a kind reminder to all the participants online and offline that there is a similar pilot project in Kyrgyzstan that is specifically focused on plastic waste and organic food waste. In other words, plastic and food waste are the two pillar components of the waste generated in the tourism industry, especially by women-led enterprises and companies. Now, dear participants, this is an excellent opportunity for you to ask questions to Nana. And Nana, you are most welcome to look at these questions in the chat box and try to answer them. In the meantime, they're in English. I would like to now give the floor to our speaker from Kazakhstan. That organization unites the more than 150 companies in Kazakhstan. Their agenda, just like a lot of other companies, is aimed at sustainable environmental development, climate change, and the prospective future consequences of climate change. So together with them, our organization is working very actively in Kazakhstan to implement several projects. First and foremost, the project called Stop the Trash or Stop the Waste. And our speaker, Ms. Aigul Solovyeva, who is the chairwoman of the environmental organizations of Kazakhstan, is also paying a lot of attention to the gender issue, as well as the agenda of women-led entrepreneurship in Kazakhstan. Aigul is here with us. So Aigul, if you can hear us, you are most welcome to go ahead and present your presentations. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, I hope that you can hear me loud and clear. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the organizers of this activity and pay my obeisance to all the organizations that are contributing to and facilitating the discussion of these relevant issues in Central Asia, which I believe are highly relevant and highly important at the moment. Now, undoubtedly, I would like to also thank organizers for being able to get us all together to actually to help us focus on this range of issues, even though this range of issues is very wide. And I believe that every single one of them requires an individual approach. Still, now that we're talking about the tourism sector, I would like to remind you that there is an association of tourism operators in Kazakhstan. I, by the way, passed on the Zoom link to you. I'm not sure if they joined the session, but I guess at the moment, this Association of Tourism Operators in Kazakhstan are mostly focused in Kazakhstan. They're mostly working on developing tourism fairs, paths in the mountains, but also where to place those trash containers, where to place them strategically, how to separate that waste, and stop the waste, stop the garbage is a project that we've been implementing over the past 3 years. It's an enlightenment and awareness raising project. It's aimed at instilling new skills, new perception of rational use of nature, of careful treatment of nature, of remembering that we are the custodians and the owners of our ecosystems. I also was a member of the previous two parliaments in Kazakhstan. So that's why I'm approaching the whole project in a systemic manner, if you will. I wanted to show that women absolutely have to be more active.
Now, to make it clear, I wanted to demonstrate the market of which women are part. And this market basically for them without any barriers and limitations exists. And Now, today we heard about the circular economy. We heard that mentioning, but still we're approaching this issue with a very seriously in our association. And we're working actively with enterprises, with industrial enterprises. But since this area is a tourism, it is, so it does, it's not, it's playing a significant role. The share is small, and the international organizations, they're focused more on us, Central Asia, to work in the mountains, and like Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, well, we'll be conducting workshops and trainings on biodiversity there in these countries. But if we speak more specifically about waste, it is important to mention that society, our public, annually they throw out 3 food items, and the major portion of these losses, this is happening in developed countries. So the waste market, it is quite large. Today we heard the World Bank figures, stats were provided on how much waste it gets accumulated. I just want to mention that in any case, we partially spoke about resource efficiency. We spoke about the need to process. And of course, this is a substantial market. And the World Bank also provided data back in 2016 that the 2 billion of tons of waste will be accumulated. So this is our prospect. If we look more precisely, I believe the United Nations is also working on, there's going to be a session or a meeting of the United Nations dedicated to digitalization. And in Kazakhstan, we applied some broadened obligations, commitments. So we subsidize all of this waste sector, those who deal with waste. And basically, so even speaking of the burning of or incineration of waste, this money allows to build some waste incineration factories. Yes, burning or incinerating waste at the dump sites or landfills. Yes, when they're incinerated, this is bad. But there are some modern technologies, and I visited one place in Paris, an enterprise in Paris. It was at one street across that factory, there are living houses with people living in them, and then they process waste, and then this accumulates energy, and plastic, it provides it's one of the most attractive niches, if you will, because there is a process, they incinerate waste, plastic, and then energy is accumulated or generated. So I would like to also point out that once again, if you look at the structure of the way it can be split into developed countries and mid-income countries and low-income countries. Well, I can send you the data. I do have the data, so probably it's a little bit boring if I list all the statistical data, but I'll give you just some statistics. For example, if we have 2 billion of solid waste, only 32% is not disposed of in a way that would be safe for the environment. So it's important to mention, if we talk about the prospects, 0.74 kilograms. This is, how can I put it? This is what each person emits or throws out. In poor countries, it's 0.11. In wealthy countries, it's almost 4.5. It's almost 4.5. And it looks like iGo's connection is very poor. So now we cannot hear iGo. And this, if you spoke about the associations, the low carbon policies, so our country, so 1.6 million tons per year is CO2 equivalent is emitted, that's 5%. And the construction of nuclear power plants, it also pretty much, this is the same number. So speaking of food waste, in some regions, so I had meetings with the deputy mayor of Paris, and they issued a grant or gave us a grant. So one of the provinces where we have the tourism sector developing, so they trained our women on how to deal with waste, particularly food waste, because the morphology is quite difficult. So, and speaking of food waste, this is used for producing humus. So because not, and speaking of this entire range, in the first presentation we heard about it, that starting from hazardous and mercury and some other toxic waste that gets into the environment. So I will send you all of the statistical data that I have. All right, Aigul's connection is pretty poor. Her voice is lost every. All right. Also, we can speak about waste collection in urban areas with the, so 40, we only collect only 44% in our cities. So speaking of the topic where women can find their niche, I would like to say that, well, what the finances, about 20%, this can be found in municipalities. And so we heard about, landfills and dump sites. This is a 33%, they account for 33%. And then we have specialized landfills with certain standards. And in Kazakhstan, we do pay attention to that. So we have the aerospatial imaging, we have fines for illicit, for construction dump, waste dump sites. And of course, these sanitary landfills, and so this can be used for collecting gases, and this will be up to 7% worldwide. So I believe that this is a good niche for women. They can find their niche. And I will just will tell you that we had the expanded commitments for entrepreneurs, where, and this is where they create a digital map. It's called Eco Code Out. So I was part of the steering committee, and I remember that there were so many people in it. It was a GPS system. And if the waste would get to the landfill, it gets weighed and then you pay. So everything was happening very quickly. So a young girl from Eastern Kazakhstan, she said, I have a small vehicle, a car, and I carry some food items, product. This is not profitable. So we suggested that she joins this map. 1 year afterwards, she said that she has very good profits now. She generates profit. The reason I talk about it, what I mean to say is, if you look at the structure, if you look at where the financing is coming from, the subsidizing, so every woman, she'll be able to find a niche for herself to work in this area. And of course, all of that has to be, we should look at it cumulatively. So we should look at the principles and other factors in the social policy and the environment. And we're also developing certain mechanisms here, but they have to do more with ecosystems. But they're about, if it's tourism, and if we look through this prism, so we can understand that this will allow businesses and citizens to understand how valuable our nature is, and then certain dividends can be gathered in the form of a certain benefit. I know that the UN has this methodology, and we invited an expert who will demonstrate on how. So we have the Lake Balhaj, we have a lot of natural resources, and there are so many fishermen there. So if you look at it, citizens will be interested in preserving nature. So I'd like to remind you that SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, I believe the government created, set up a commission. So we have 262 indicators, targets, I believe, and they're divided. And then each indicator, we pretty much trace or keep track of each indicator. All right, again, we're losing Aigul. So I would like to also focus on saying that there are certain mechanisms that can be used, that women, they can utilize this tool. This is gender budgeting. We had one gender equality strategy in Kazakhstan. It is over and it was quite successful. And the Kazakhstan ranking in women's success, it clearly demonstrates that this strategy worked. And of course, there are some mechanisms, monitoring mechanisms on how a certain sector has an impact on equal payment, also on what jobs or on employment. So I believe I can list all of them, but I believe today it's been 2 hours of our work. People got tired. So anyway, I will send my speaking points, talking points to all of you, and you will see some statistics. We heard about it previously. If we use these tools appropriately, so basically it's important to understand what outcomes and we will be able to achieve. So it is in terms of tourism and in the area of waste management. So I believe we can calculate all this, and says we have women today, and we had a speaker from Georgia. So the network exists in the Caucasus. If there is a need, we can share these tools, and it would be good if we could make some evaluation based results that we started. For example, we started by saying that we spoke about the current situation, but how exactly we advance in this area. Well, to prove that, to show that, showcase that, we can use the tools that already exist, and they're quite effective. They work, and they allow to achieve the goals. And also spoke about the circular economy. I can say more about it, but it's difficult maybe to listen to it at this point. So I'll send my talking points once again. I could not make a PowerPoint presentation. I apologize. So we have the elections going on in Kazakhstan. So I'm helping women for them to participate at various levels. But still, I got a little confused about the topic because, gender, this is a very large area. Tourism is a large area. Entrepreneurship, waste management, these are big, huge topics. We can have a separate conference on each of these topics. So I tried to convey this information to all of you as much as I could. And hopefully I was able to convey the Kazakhstani women's desire to be with you and to support with you, and maybe to somehow share their experience. Well, I think we're ready to be with you. So thank you once again. And once again, I want to congratulate, to wish you a happy International Women's Day. So hopefully whatever was done in the previous, now we were becoming deputies, parliamentarians. We were allowed to run in the elections. Even in large business, we have a lot of women who are managers. They hold high positions. In the provinces, I don't think we have any woman who would be a governor. Well, but little by little, we'll get there. So we're gaining political participation. So I want to wish everybody success. And once again, we would like to work on this issue more dynamically, and hopefully Central Asian women, just like we heard today in the presentation, they're the most educated, the most talented. They're the most beautiful. They're the most educated and well-bred, and they always know how to build their relations with men. Thank you. Thank you so much, Aigul, for your wonderful presentation, particularly for the tools and the mechanisms that we can apply and we can share experience on. As you're fully right, this is a topic that is quite broad. We talk about tourism and women's issues and gender presence. And of course, we talk about environmental issues relating to that our countries face. And yet we'll be very much thankful to you for your talking points, like you said, your presentation. We'll send it to our participants. Today we have about 100 people. So over 30 of them are here in this room. And then all others joined us through the Zoom platform. So basically from all Central Asian countries in the Caucasus, we'll send the recording and the materials and the context and other tools for communication. We'll be happy to cooperate. I can see here we have a lot of questions coming up for discussion. We can also see how the Zoom chat is functioning. But I would like to suggest our next expert presentation to share the experience of Kyrgyzstan. But first of all, I would like to demonstrate a short video clip. So our main speaker is a key actor. Can I have a lemonade and some cookies? Each of us take food to go takeaways. Have you noticed how normally, oops. All right, this was just for you. Well, after the difficult discussions we had, but still, this is a very thematic. It's also part of our today's discussion. So, can I have a lemon? Once again, let's watch this video clip. So let us continue. We'll start again. Can I have one lemonade and a cookie? Have you noticed that we all take food to go takeaways? Have you noticed how usually we're served a plastic glass, a plastic straw, a plastic bag, and a plastic lid? So in cafes and restaurants, it is considered that the more the food is packed, the more hygiene. Somebody says there is a technical problem. All right. So now we hear both the speaker and the video. So we cannot hear all the key messages. All right. We have now both the video and the speaker talking at the same time, so we cannot hear anything. So I'll give the floor to Gulzat. Now the video is over. Now we can hear the speaker. So now I'll give the floor to the person who is in this video, and she will tell us about the tourism development and also about the issues relating to waste. So hello, dear colleagues. I'm very happy to see all of you here on the eve of the wonderful holiday. So the main message in this video clip was that every single person, they should start with themselves. If all of us start with ourselves, like, sorting out the garbage or replacing certain disposable bags or with multiple use bags, recyclable ones, the nature will thank us. A nature that is just like a woman, it gives us a lot. It gives us pretty much everything. So my name is Gozad, and I am a chairperson of the Horeca. This is hotel, restaurants, and cafes. So we have hotels and restaurants, not only in Bishkek, but we also have them all throughout Kyrgyzstan. So we lobby and we also develop this sector.
Now that we unite HoReCa sector companies, we consistently conduct several pieces of research and studies in order to see what the waste management practices are in our country. Now, today, I didn't want to speak to you in the form of a presentation, especially taking into consideration the fact that I am the final speaker as per the agenda. I just wanted to show you what the situation is with the HoReCa sector in Kyrgyzstan, what kind of waste we generate in that sector, what we do about that waste, and what small and medium businesses are doing, and what we can do in order to make the whole sector greener. Now, unfortunately, all of that is viewed through the prism of money. It's all about the question of how profitable since we are wholesale buyers of there are a lot of that there is a lot of waste generated. Today, I decided today the situation in rural areas is different from the situation in Bishkek. So what do restaurants do in the HoReCa sector with the waste? Say, of course, there is a lot of waste generated, right, by the HoReCa sector. So what happens is people from rural areas are come to Bishkek and collect that food waste in order to use it for feeding purposes to especially big farmers. Normally, it's these farms that collect these barrels with organic food waste in order to feed those pigs. So we can say most of that organic waste is then remitted to farms. So we have because yes, there are a lot of PET bottles. We know that PET bottles, polyethylene plastic bottles have to be sorted. And so our cooks work the way, do what they do. Well, the problem is that we do not have the site to actually collect all these PET bottles for them to be eventually separated and collected. And and and, and it would be a great solution in order to store that waste, to collect them, and then to recycle them eventually. Now, that was speaking of PET bottles. How about glass? There's a lot of broken glass. There are women who wash those glass bottles. Some of these glass bottles generate. There are cracks appearing on them. Now, of course, it's no longer safe, and one of the solutions is to buy a dishwasher, specialized dishwasher for any HoReCa member, which is a great solution. It's a green solution. It uses very little water, and professional chemicals that are used on those specialized dishwashers are which also help. There's a lot of money involved there because again, businesses spend a lot of money in order to purchase new bottles or new porcelain. And then what happens is whenever such bottles or porcelain is broken, it ends up on the landfill. And then again, not every business can afford to spend $3,000 on purchasing these professional dishwashers. And so we and again, the plastic, I guess the question is whether or not it should be done or can be done. When we buy milk or fermented milk, we do purchase it in such bottles. So yes, there is a site dedicated for collection, and generally there are no problems associated with that. Yet the issue is that the closest bottle or collection point is relatively far, and it's simply not profitable enough for businesses to go and dispose of these bottles at that specialized collection point. So it's all about convenience and infrastructure. So what else? Speaking of food sharing, well, we talked about it. However, the thing is that we we know that after every festivity, after every restaurant mass gathering, there is a great tradition of food being given to people for them to take home. So food sharing, it's normally after conferences or mass gatherings, and office workers definitely also collect all the excess food after any conference. Or however, when we work in rural areas, we try to pass on information that, look, lunch boxes for tourists that are prepared by that are then uh, that such plastic containers that they should be used in such a plastic and from such a type of plastic that could be recycled, because tourists then take these lunch boxes and litter. So we also touched on the issue of composting. And my dream is that for the HoReCa sector to start using composting machines, composting apparatuses that can generate a fertilizer from organic food waste within 24 hours that could be then resold to the agrarian sector, say for growers of vegetables such as tomatoes and cucumbers. And the reason why it's a dream of mine is, again, agricultural businesses from rural areas simply cannot afford these composting machines. And I asked myself a specific question: what is it that I can personally do in order to improve the situation with sanitation, say outhouses and biological toilets in nomadic yurt camps, nomadic house camps. Yes, in summer pastures. Yes, litter and human feces and other type of byproducts of human activity, they do not look very pretty. So we wanted to find a solution for these nomadic house camps, yurt camps, in the form of biological toilets. And I would like to show you a video. And before that, I would like to tell you about a case study where we were able to successfully install a porta potty. Now, before that, the indigenous practice, the Kyrgyz people didn't really understand what these biological movable porta potties are used for, why they're so efficient. And there was a local resident who said, you know what, I would like to procure these human feces from you, because that would be an excellent contribution as an organic fertilizer. Yes, human feces are one of the absolutely best forms of organic fertilizers to be introduced into the soil. Now, a very short video to be played. This is our solution, a bio porta potty. In order to eliminate the bad smell, the pungent smell of it, we prepared such a structure. Every person, after using such a bio porta potty, utilizes the wood chippings. The urine is being collected separately. The place for the collection of solid feces mixed with wood chippings. The personal protective equipment, mask, goggles, and gloves are used in order to serve the compost. 3 yurt camps, nomadic house camps, have already applied this practice of composting biological porta potty. Thank you very much, Goza, for the most honest, the most frank, applied, hands-on practices that are currently available and practiced in the HoReCa sector, in the tourism sector. Absolutely, every sector has its own nuances, has its own unique practices. Today, we were able to get to learn what the tourism sector and the HoReCa sub-industry in particular is doing in Kyrgyzstan. Now is the time for us to have a very quick Q&A regarding on the local practices in waste management, the role of women in waste management, and what the prospects and challenges are. We have several questions in the chat box from our participants, especially with respect to some of the presentations and materials, the dissemination of presentations and materials and video recordings. Absolutely, every single participant who registered will receive all the presentations and all the Zoom recordings in order for the subsequent dissemination. Absolutely, yes. Now, one of the main questions was directed to Donna from Georgia, and it pertained to the use of green procurements at enterprises. Nana already answered that question in the chat box. Thank you so much. You've been very gracious. Indeed, there have been guidances prepared in Georgia for sustainable green procurements. And how to ecologize such companies. By the way, one of the guidances was drafted and disseminated, published by UNEP. We'll try to receive it as soon as possible and then to send it out for all the interested stakeholders. Now, any questions coming from the offline audience? Yes, if I may, please. I have several questions, so may I go ahead and voice them out? First of all, I would like to draw your attention to the following. Now, Article 12 of the law on the revenues from the waste management prohibits the importation of waste into our country. So then who allows the importation of waste if it's prohibited by the law? Perhaps it's re-export or transit or recycled material. Perhaps somebody in the chat could talk about it. As to the burning of waste, it's actually allowed in our country to generate electricity. Yet companies that do that are supposed to comply with all the special requirements and install the specialized equipment, including bag filters, etc., etc. You know, as long it's actually environmentally neutral as long as such a company that burns waste installs all the correct equipment. As to the presentation by Nana that I enjoyed very much, and by the way, this is something that I've been mentioning last Friday. You know, we can talk a lot about teaching the new generation, school students, separation of waste, yet not enough effort is funneled for the construction of the infrastructure or of specialized landfills. And I absolutely enjoyed the practice in Georgia, the closure of landfills with the concurrent remediation and rehabilitation of them and the opening of new, perfectly compliant and well-equipped new landfills. See, that's the way to do it, because in Bishkek, the situation is very dire, where we have a big municipal landfill where the waste is being burned and where which is not remediated. So, you know, instead of calling them sanctioned landfills, we should build proper disposal sites. Now, I'm not sure if there was an answer from the chat box. Speaking of the disposal of textiles and the waste of textile shops, I wasn't able to see what I wasn't able to join the chat, and perhaps Nana could answer. When you were working with textile shops and the women you showed, are you helping them with proper management of the waste coming from such textile shops? Another question is the solid municipal or residential waste management. We need to know the breakdown of such a waste. What can be taken out from such solid municipal residential waste to be reused, and what will absolutely have to be disposed forever? Now, as to women involved in the management of landfills, I haven't heard anything about what we do or what we should do to provide personal protective equipment to such men or women or men for that matter. I haven't heard anything about that neither last Friday nor today. Is there anything that we're doing to help such women protect their respiratory systems, reproductive systems, women that work on such landfills? We also talked about the importance of storage of waste. Now, the law only allows for 11 months for the storage of such waste. Yes, remember that waste can only be stored for 11 months only under proper storage conditions. Yet companies try to store it even much longer because they only want to sell it when the price is high enough. So they do not comply with this 11-month time frame that restriction. So also, compaction of plastic is a whole separate issue. And, speaking of plastic utensils, well, I can see a lot of efforts, but at the same time, there was so much advertisement, but not much actions. Olga, thank you so much. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have similar questions. I can also see that there was a discussion, there was interaction with Nana. Thank you so much, Nana. So, Irina, the question from you. So during COVID and during the post-COVID time, you know that in the HoReCa sector, apparently HoReCa sector has promoted the food delivery and food because during the pandemic, everybody was staying home. Now, the food delivery is all about plastic, right? It's all about single-use utensils, et cetera, et cetera. So HoReCa definitely through the food delivery generates a lot of plastic. So the question is, also, by the way, the practice of delivery of coffee has also become very popular, and these coffee cups are not biodegradable. So on the one hand, we're talking about recycling, responsible consumption, and on the other hand, the HoReCa sector through the food delivery or coffee delivery started to generate so much more plastic, and now are we talking about awareness raising here, or should there be negative reinforcement? Should there be penalties? Thank you very much, Irina.
It has to do not just with tourism, but in general. And we should recognize the fact that this disposable single-use plastic or waste coming from single-use packaging. So I'll not speak only about disposable cups, but we can talk about all kinds of cardboard and film-based and all kinds of disposable kitchenware. So this is also present in the HoReCa sector, but most probably the consumers also set the tone because they prefer, this quick way of resolving this issue. Now, speaking of best practices, we can see that in the worldwide, and also we see this at the regional level, and also in Kyrgyzstan, there are some cafes that intentionally move away from providing disposable cups or silverware to their guests unless they insist. So we can collect so many examples. There are not so many examples. This is not still widespread, but still, we see that the HoReCa sector is slowly but surely moving there. So we'll speak more about the wastenet network a little later. That joins about 60% of all participants from. So these are representatives of the HoReCa sector. So through joint action by increasing awareness, or raising public awareness, so by looking for solutions to replace this practice, so jointly we'll have to work with our communities and to hold them accountable. And also in Kyrgyzstan, we are very actively discussing the issues of responsibility for producers. A concept has been developed, our producer responsibility. On the website of the parliament, you can see a draft bill, draft law on producers' responsibility. After this dialogue takes place at the state level, I believe that the consumption and the use of disposable plastic cups and plates, and this will be declining. But for that, we need the participation of all stakeholders. Thank you for your comments. In fact, I would like to suggest, just for us to wrap up our official part. So maybe this will be the last and the shortest presentation, two important presentations for us to move on to other in-depth discussions. So once again, you can use this opportunity. You can put your comments or questions in the chat box so that all of us can receive answers. And hopefully that everything is going to be well taken notice of, and that we'll be answering to all of your questions. So we look for joint solutions on how to help with waste management, and on how to bring women to resolving these issues, and on how to support the tourist sector in order to strengthen and to make this sector in the Kyrgyz Republic more ecological, also in Kyrgyzstan, also in Central Asia and the Caucasus. Natalia, I want to give the floor to our coordinator of ecological projects, Ms. Natalia, and she will briefly tell us about the measures which are taken to support waste management in the tourist recreational zones. So Natalia, you have the floor. All right, can we have my presentation up on the screen since we have a little time left? Well, I will quickly go through my presentation and I'm hopeful that you can learn in more detail in our social media accounts. So I would like to also say that our today's activity has been organized within the framework of a pilot project on sustainable tourism and waste management and plastic and food waste management with the support of UNEP and the global initiative. Can we see the next slide? With the help of the global UNEP program, global opportunities for sustainable development goals, Go for SDG. And this project and this initiative, once again, it is fully in line with the initiative on tourism and plastic. And that's why our topic is a combined topic, if you will. So since many parties accepted this initiative and the pilot project, it is not that big at the moment, so for February and May through May, but there are 4 components that we've been able to implement. Okay, the next slide. So the first one, this is the educational component, and these are video clips and some other materials and some manuals on plastic waste management and food waste management. So these are the 2 types of waste that this project is aiming at. And the next one is women empowerment in the sector of tourism. And our today's activity is dedicated to this specific topic. And the third one is organization of the waste management system in tourist destinations. And also the 4th component, this is what Asel spoke about. This is supporting the reform and policy in the sector of waste management, including plastic waste management. All right, the next slide. So our today's activity that is being held today, the next slide. And what I want to discuss here, this is the demonstration of a pilot waste management system in the selected destination. So we selected the Churgalan destination. You can see it on the map where it is located because the ecological tourism is well developed there. And this is a very interesting place in terms of nature. And as an example, we chose this destination. So the next slide. And we had the first survey or the study, and we looked at waste management there. We conducted a workshop. We also had very productive communication with all guest houses, and a decision was made to try to introduce as much as possible the proper waste management, starting from sorting out the garbage and up to this sending this garbage for recycling or be it composting or something else. In May, we will present the outcomes, what turned out as a result, and we believe that this example, can be replicated at other destinations, or maybe it's going to be useful for some other countries where we can share the experience that we received as part of this pilot project. And we proceed. Now, this is what we spoke about earlier. This is facilitation and facilitating political change in our country. Now, let us proceed. Now, speaking of where exactly we can discuss the issues of waste management and the role of women in this process. For that, in 2018, a wastenet network was established. It's called wastenet.kg. And as of now, we have about 160 participants, members in our organization. This organization helps deal with waste. This is the HoReCa sector, the ones that form the waste, and also universities and banks are involved, and some others. And also the sector for waste management and processing that deals specifically with collecting all kinds of waste and also processing waste. So this has to do mostly with plastic and glass and paper and so on. So solid waste, solid residential waste. Now, this platform, the major goal of this platform is to provide services to both economic entities to introduce the system of sorting out the garbage and sending waste for processing, and also supporting the processing sector as a technical, both technical and financially. So the main precondition for being a member is waste accounting, if you will. So as a main indicator, we need to know how much waste we accumulate separately and how much waste does not go to the landfill but gets processed. So for that, on the website, there is a counter and this will be fully reflected. Can we proceed? All right, let us proceed. So if we have the system of waste management, so we need to have some kind of an encouragement, and this should be a good example for others. So we have eco marking, so we best recycle practices. So the best practices of introduced for dealing with waste. Now, 9 organizations, they have our label, and they can talk about being ecologically oriented in terms of waste management. Now, the website, so this is the website where it will have information not just about the wastenet, but about all other results. This is we're part of this network, and also this will be covered in the social media. So this is it. This has been very brief. I believe you can learn in more detail if you go to our social media accounts. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. All right, thank you, Natalia. I suggest we go to the website because there are a lot of interesting questions and there are all kinds of contests and competitions right now. There is a competition for the HoReCa sector, hotels and restaurants located in the Isikul province, to install the specialized storage facilities for plastic and food waste. And also there are common competitions for journalists and all kinds of meetings and interesting solutions and all kinds of seminars, and all stakeholders, they share their experience. But there is one question, so we discussed it briefly, and Aigul, she spoke about it earlier, that the waste is not just about responsibility, it's not just about the being ecologically friendly, but it's also about profit generating. So income generating, we're saying that if we manage this systematically, this can become part of the circular economy. This may yield some profit, and this may help economically. So therefore, I want to give the floor to our last speaker for today, who will speak about the financial opportunities for waste management. This is our partner. This is a commercial bank, Das Credo Bank. DCB. All right, I'll give the floor to the Deputy Director of the Credit Department, Mr. Haldar. Yes, Haldar, are you with us? Yes, can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. So you have 5 minutes for a very brief information. Thank you so much. I want to thank the organizers for this activity. I'm very pleased to be here among women. It's mostly among women, only there are a few men here. So I will briefly tell you about Das Credo Bank. Can we see the next slide? It was established in 1997. We've been around in the market for about 25 years, and we have 9 branches. And this information is not updated. There are over 42 affiliate branches. So we have 24/7 branches in Bishkek and in Osh, cashiers' offices. So the teller's offices, 24, they work 24/7. The Das Credo Bank became the first bank that signed the green financing principles. This is also our bank is working with the Green Climate Fund. It's receiving support from the Green Climate Fund on introducing green technologies. So at this point in time, we have developed several programs on green financing, and these deal with several aspects of our economy. This is the agri sector, the electric vehicles, electrical cars. So we will not speak about all achievements. Let us speak about the topic of our today's activity. Das Credo Bank is a member of the Business Network on Waste Management, WasteNet. We received a certificate for this. I want to thank WasteNet for that, for this certificate. And jointly with wastenet, Dust Credit Bank launched a program of women's entrepreneurship, so supporting women entrepreneurs involved in the area of collection, disposal of, and processing of waste. In other words, women entrepreneurs can receive financing up to 500,000 sums, 6% interest rate for up to 12 months. This is a very attractive interest rate. It's almost non-existent in among other banks. So if you have anyone who would be eligible for this program, they can talk to us. We will be, the minimum package documents is required. We'll be happy to deal with, to help. All right, thank you so much. We want to congratulate the bank with the opening of a new green point. So this happened a few days ago. And I believe that this is also a very good case when the financial sector can also contribute to sustainable development. Once again, I want to stress for all participants that today we had a very intense agenda, so we have to wrap up, regrettably, and we want to urge you to join, enter into a dialogue with us so that you can hear all about the partnership and cooperation. Thank you so much. I want to thank every speaker who has become a participant of our activity. So what we're seeing today, so this is the beginning of our interventions. So all suggestions, all recommendations, we will be more than happy to listen to that, and jointly we'll be able to make an effort to improve the situation, both domestically and also internationally. Just like we saw today, basically in all countries, people make every single effort, and women, they demonstrate a high level of leadership and competencies and professionalism. We can see that at every part of the waste management chain, we can find some decisions and help each other. We don't have any time left for questions. I have to wrap up our today's activity. I want to congratulate you once again with the 8th of March. And I want to invite you for the reception, and we'll be happy to discuss things personally. So I want to thank the speakers. I want to thank our online participants. As we can see here, you also had a very lively discussion there, and allow me to finish our today's activity. So goodbye, see you soon. So women in the room, let me